I want to talk about it very quickly with Ian Allis, who is a legal expert, and Dr. Shaheda Omar, who is the director of the Teddy Bear Clinic. And Dr. Omar, I want to start with you this morning. Given the time that's lapsed, given what we typically know in cases like this, that when that trail goes cold, it generally doesn't bode well for the well-being of a victim such as Joshlin Smith. What are your thoughts this morning, 3 months on, and given everything we know about the case insofar as what police have uncovered and who's actually been arrested?
Well, I think the first thing, the fact that 3 months have lapsed, one needs to be realistic and understand and appreciate that this child is highly unlikely to be found. The reality is that we know with trafficking in persons, there's a change of hands, numerous chains of hands. And if the child is not found within the first 24 hours, the situation looks very bleak. But we also need to appreciate and realize that the immediate response was not swift, timeous, and that certainly compromised the opportunity for finding this young girl. But also the reality that 4 people have now, are appearing in court. And the sad reality is that the biological mother, who is expected to protect her child, who is expected to nurture and care for the child, who is actually a suspect and who has been guilty in this process of not being truthful and has betrayed her child in this process. It is indeed a tragedy of note. The reality is that this child has, there's no hope for this child. I hate to break it to everyone, but unfortunately, finding this child is very unlikely. Even if she is alive, it's very unlikely. It's a very sad day for South Africa, for children of South Africa, and for many families.
I just want to quickly follow up with you, Dr. Omar. Are you not prejudging the mother? This matter still has to be heard in court. The evidence still has to be tested. And while there's been a lot of anecdotal accounts about her neglect, she's been accused of neglecting her child, she still deserves to be treated as someone who's innocent, no?
So you are absolutely correct. Innocent until proven guilty. But if we just look at the chain of evidence and the responses and the process of information sharing, unfortunately, it doesn't look very positive. And the reality is that this mother has not been actually very caring or nurturing, looking at the history of it. But yes, we cannot prejudge the process. But if we look at statistics and what we are finding on the ground, that more and more children are being abused, are being violated, are being brutalized within the home environment where they are supposed to be protected. So 80 to 90% of the cases, it is somebody that has a close relationship, that has easy access and availability to the child. So it's not your typical stranger danger scenario that we are faced with.
Ian Allis, love your thoughts on that perspective.
Iman, good morning, Iman, and good morning to the viewers as well. I agree completely with what Dr. Omar is actually saying. I'd like to just also make a certain additional assessment. And that relates to also when the initial investigation took place. The problem now, especially with the mother being the accused, she was the one who gave a lot of provisional information. And in doing so, because those first 24 hours are critical, and without also prejudging, the fact is that a lot of that information was incorrect in following up with and finding the child, and in doing so, that was costly in its own right. So, unfortunately, even with the presumption of innocence until proven guilty, she's done a lot of damage to the prospects of finding the child because of the false information that's actually been tendered by her in the investigation, especially in its early stages, if one could say.
Can you just
And
tell us,
that is
Ian,
where
which
they
information,
can have a
sorry
problem.
to interject at that point, but for viewers who might not have followed every single development in the case, which evidence or which information are you pointing to here that misled police?
When she started doing the initial interviews, and her lack of knowledge of any of the events, and how the child was left and not and who was left caring for the child. She led the police on a bit of a wild goose chase, which showed completely the opposite. Was when there was that surveillance footage that was actually picked up with her in the vehicle.
So what are we expecting in terms of court? We know that they've abandoned their bail applications. We know that in the beginning there was another accused that was brought into custody and then released. Just talk to us about the nature of cases like these and some of the changes we might be seeing, both in terms of the accused, perhaps additions to those who have been accused, and the fluidity of cases like these as new information comes to light. Ian?
Well, what they'll do in the interim is they'll probably continue to postpone the matter because of ongoing investigations until such time as they are ready to disclose the full extent, the full contents of the docket to the accused. Obviously, the accused will also try and push the proceedings along, hopefully, in order for those investigations not to be finalized completely, but they have been afforded quite a significant time period, the police also, to investigate. So the investigation should be complete, and eventually down the line, you'll never know exactly when, in terms of how the courts are operating and how the parties are prepared when the matter will go to trial, but eventually it will go to trial. There may well be additional accused to be introduced, but that's a 50-50 aspect, unless they can find one of the accused who is materially involved in the trafficking or potentially even worse.